Somebody that we didn't know a lot about was Ali Gaye coming into this football season. Now, Coach O told us about him. Now, did a lot of LSU fans listen? I don't know, but he kept saying over and over again in the summertime and in the fall camp there, this is someone that not only we're going to count on, but is going to be a very productive player for us. You sat down with Ali Gaye, and his story, Cody, is truly amazing. What was the kind of the most fascinating thing that you learned? Because it's going to be hard for you to pick out just one, I think.
Yeah, let me go back a little bit. I was up at the football facility earlier this year, and when I need a story idea, I go into the training room, and so I went into the training room, and I was talking with Jack Marucci, and actually this was out at practice, so let me rephrase that. It was at practice. I saw Jack. I said, "Hey, Jack, I'm fishing for stories." And he said, "Let me tell you about Ali Gaye." And he basically gave me the very, very sparse details, which was he's an incredible guy. Everyone in the program loves him. He's playing lights out. And he wears number 11 for a special reason. And so I sat down with Ali this week wanting to ask him about that. And it turns out he wears 11 to honor Bryce Beekman. When he told me that, my jaw kind of dropped because Bryce Beekman, for those who don't know, is a former Washington State player from Baton Rouge, who I think went to Scotlandville.
Yeah.
And Bryce and Ali played in junior college together. And what's crazy about their stories is that Bryce is from Baton Rouge, went to Washington and played football with a stop in Arizona. Ali grew up or finished growing up. He was born in the Gambia in West Africa, but he went to Washington for high school and then stopped at Arizona for junior college and then came to Baton Rouge. So their paths crossed almost like going different directions. But Bryce passed away this spring, and Ali basically immediately, or as soon as he could, went to the coaches and asked if he could wear Bryce's number 11 because Bryce had that kind of impact on him. He was an incredible personality, a guy that inspired Ali, who gave him energy. And so he asked if he could wear 11. And, he goes out in his first game wearing number 11. He said he could feel Bryce's presence there. And, of course, he comes out of the game with 11 pressures. And so, we talked about that connection. But there's so much more to his story. In fact, right as you guys called me, I just finished writing about 3,000 words on him that I'm going to have up at LSUsports.net in a second that talks about his entire journey because it's really incredible.
There's so many different ways that we could go here because as you were telling me, we were doing the podcast earlier this week and you were kind of telling me just some of the facts about Ali Gaye. I mean, super interesting. And one of the parts was you said he actually stayed at LSU during the lockdown. A lot of people kind of went home. They went their different ways, but he wanted to stay here. He wanted to get stronger. He wanted to get faster. He's already a massive man if you see him out there, but that's something that was a point of emphasis for him.
Yeah, it was. He jokes when kids ask him how he got so big. He jokes that he ate a lot of rice. That's kind of his thing that he tells them. But he stayed here when everything shut down, working out because he's incredibly focused. If you ask anyone in that building, teammates, coaching staff, training staff, they're going to tell you that he's just the best kid in the world, and it's true. He's incredibly grateful, engaging, coming from the Gambia, incredibly focused. His parents moved here when he was in middle school and gave up a good life in the Gambia, good jobs, to come to the United States, take jobs that weren't as good, that required 16-hour days, 7 days a week, just so he and his sisters could have a chance. So when you get that kind of kid that understands what his parents have given up and sacrificed and has that kind of appreciation, he is so grateful, and he takes that perspective with him onto the field. So he worked his tail off this offseason, got in great shape, and came out of the gates just absolutely flying around the football field this fall. When I was up there for that same practice, and it's crazy, before Jack even kind of gave me the detail that he had an interesting story, it was literally he was the first guy that popped out to me because I said, who is 11? Like, that guy, he looks phenomenal. You don't typically see a defensive lineman wearing 11. He looked big, he looked strong, he looked fast. And sure enough, it was Ali Gaye. And, I didn't know exactly who he was then, but everyone knows who he is now the way that he's been playing.
Cody Worsham is our guest. Cody, what was his not coming to the United States until he was in middle school? Where was he introduced? How was he introduced to American football?
Yeah, so when he came here, he came as a seventh grader, and they weren't allowed to play football at that age. And he actually wasn't that big. He was like 5'5", 5'6" in middle school. And so he fell in love with basketball. He played basketball for a couple of years, got pretty good then. But then he had a huge growth spurt as a freshman. He played as an eighth grader. He was getting bigger then, but not. He wasn't, the specimen that he is now. But he was, 5'9", 5'10", and they said, hey, this kid might grow and be big. Why don't you come play football? So he played as a eighth grader, and then his freshman year he really grew. He got to about 6'4", really big, and so they just kind of let him loose. And his high school did a great job developing him, and he's really, really close with his high school coach and his high school coach's wife. I think there's been a couple other stories. I think Wilson Alexander with The Advocate did a story on him. Brody Miller did a story on him. They go into some of the high school stuff and his relationship with those coaches a little bit. I didn't go quite that direction, but they took him under their wing and turned him into a really good player. Now, coming out of high school, he had committed to Washington and was a really good prospect, but didn't have the grades, and so he went to junior college, showed a lot of talent, still was kind of unheralded, though, like a three-star guy that didn't have a ton of production. But, man, he's really just blossomed this year and really turned into what everyone thought he could be.
I'm going to ask you this, Cody, because I actually don't know the answer to it. Actually, when I was coming out at LSU and going to the NFL, the Jaguars head scout came up to me at the combine and said, hey, did you play soccer all growing up? And I said, yeah, why? He goes, well, I can tell by your footwork on the backs. And I thought that was really cool that he noticed that. I kind of see some of that in Ali Gaye. Did he have a soccer background at all?
Yeah, so good observation there. He grew up in the Gambia. He played soccer, and that was the sport that he played, and he would play barefoot in the sand. They had sand in the streets, and so that's his memory of the Gambia is playing soccer barefoot in the street with his friends in the sand. And so when he came to the States, that was what he wanted to do. He wanted to play soccer, but they didn't have a team at his school. So I think he played a little club soccer, but pretty quickly when people started to kind of see his natural athleticism, they kind of, you know how it is over here. If you're the star athlete, the soccer team ain't getting you.
Right.
The football team and the basketball team are getting you. And so he did that, and you can see it on the field. I mean, his feet are very, very nimble for his size. That's why he moves so well. He's so fluid and just has that balance, that change of direction. Yeah, that's his roots, and then he kind of picked up football late and really took to it.
Cody, at what point did it become evident that this guy could make a living at this? I mean, we're talking about a 3-year ascent here from junior college to the Southeastern Conference to what I'm assuming next year, the year after, is going to be the NFL. When did it become apparent that this guy was this talented?
I think his high school coaches saw the potential, when he was a sophomore in high school. But I don't know that they ever knew that he was going to get to this point. I think they thought it was possible, but that it was going to be it would take a lot of work. But he's such a hard worker. I think really LSU saw something in him because he wasn't the highest recruited kid. I mean, he had some good offers, but if I remember correctly, and I don't follow recruiting as closely as I used to, but there were fans who said, well, this is kind of a reach. Maybe LSU doesn't need this guy in this class. He doesn't have the Alabama and the Ohio State and the all these other blue chip offers. Is LSU reaching for him? But I think there was a little bit of kind of signs throughout his time that, man, if he puts it all together, if he puts the athleticism with the technique and he gets it all together in one package, he could be special. And then I think once he got to LSU and really this fall camp, I think the start of fall camp, it was obvious. If you went out there, he was really, really dominant. Coach O started talking about him. Remember the day that they announced he was a starter, there was a little bit of surprise. And I'm lucky to have some access. I wasn't surprised at all. Like every time I went out there, he was making plays and just looked really good. So I think it's been a slow build-up where there was always potential there, but the production didn't match it at the junior college level. But you could see the potential. But now, I mean, it's all coming together.
Cody, anytime that we would open it up on the podcast and we get questions coming into the season, the defensive end position was probably the number one position of concern for LSU fans. They didn't know who it was going to be. They didn't know if you had these elite guys on the edge that would be able to get a rush on the quarterback. And that's actually, in the first couple of weeks, been a position of strength for LSU. Not only Ali Gaye, Andre Anthony, B.J. Ojolari, you've had multiple guys step up at that position. I know you've done some numbers as well, over the last couple of weeks, but I look at that position now as one that I think is actually taken care of in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, through 2 weeks, you can't argue with the results. LSU's first in the SEC in pressures, first in, I think, sacks, quarterback hits. They're getting after the passer, and they've done it in different ways. The first game against Mississippi State, which, by the way, the pressure wasn't effective. Like, we all can see that. But they were getting after the quarterback, but they did it more with blitzes. I think it was about a 50-50 split between blitzes and non-blitzes when LSU was getting after the passer. Against Vanderbilt, it was a hard shift in the other direction. I think LSU blitzed on like 9 of 32 dropbacks. So most of the time they were just sending the front guys, but they were still able to generate pressure. And those guys have played well. I mean, Ali Gaye is grading out really well. After his first game against Mississippi State, when his numbers were unbelievable with 11 pressures and 8 hurries and 3 hits and a sack or whatever, I tweeted that number, and then someone reached out to me from the program and said, hey, like, those numbers are good. He graded out even better than that. Like, he was better than those ridiculous numbers. And we saw Andre Anthony had a really good game against Vanderbilt. You mentioned Ojulari. He's actually, according to Pro Football Focus, has been LSU's highest graded defensive lineman in both games. So he's done some nice things. And then you've seen the guys in the interior step up a little bit too. So to me, it's a little too premature to say it's a position of strength going forward. We need to see them do it against Florida and, build on it against Missouri, do it against Florida next week. But so far, it's definitely been a strength, and I don't think you can be anything but happy with the way those guys have played.
Cody, we're looking forward to reading the whole story at LSUsports.net. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us, and enjoy the weekend.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.